Welcome to Season 3 of Under the Sisterhood, Women Making the World Healthier. Today we have a special edition featuring our founder, Elizabeth Elfenbein, who has spent several decades creating innovative solutions for the health and wellness industry. This is a podcast to celebrate women and all they do in our world. I'm Danielle Sundberg, our host for this podcast. Let's get under the hood. Today we're getting under the hood with Elizabeth Elfenbein, a mother, daughter, sister, visionary, changemaker, internationally acclaimed storyteller, creative leader, and passionate advocate for women's well-being. As the founder and CEO of Under the Sisterhood and the non-for-profit arm Sisterhood, she's on a mission to strengthen women through the power of sisterhood globally. Elizabeth's remarkable journey is marked by a string of prestigious awards, including Elite Disruptor by PM360 and Creative Online All-Star by OMA. Her groundbreaking work and commitment to innovative solutions are changing lives, and she's leading the way in empowering women across the globe. Wow. Welcome, Elizabeth. Thank you for giving us your time today.
Oh, well, thank you so much for hosting me, Danielle. I'm so excited to be on the other side of the microphone.
Right. I know this is going to be really fun. The tables are turned, and I'm really excited. And I think all of your listeners are to hear really about your story and how you've gotten here. And so we're going to get into that, and you're going to have a chance to tell us about your path and everything that you've learned in the health and wellness industry. But first, I want to ask you where your passion for health and wellness came from.
I love this question. I was born into a family of physicians, so health and wellness was ingrained at me from the beginning of time. However, it wasn't really until I began my career in advertising and experienced working across multiple sectors, healthcare being one of them, that it really stuck with me. I found that I was able to have make a greater impact and really touch people in a more meaningful way. And as I grew in my career and climbed the ladder, more opportunities opened up to do good across the space, the health and wellness space. I worked on big pharma, I worked in biotech, I worked in health tech, I worked in digital therapeutics, health system and payers, and I worked across customers from consumers to patients to caregivers to physicians to payers. I worked across the continuum. And I think the thing that I always my mantra was, everyone's a consumer, they just consume information differently. And so how are we going to create communications and do work that really affected change based on our customers and based on where they were and whatever part of their healthcare journey. So that was, I think, where my passion began. And then as I continued to grow in my career, these opportunities just became more and more open, and I had a blank canvas to create and affect change.
Wow. Yeah. Was there a moment when you realized, oh, okay, whatever it is I'm doing, it needs to be towards health and wellness?
There was a time that was that inflection moment where I decided that health and wellness was going to be where I built the rest of my career in. And what I would say is I'll take a step back, and throughout my career, I wove in and out of healthcare and health and wellness, and then worked on, of course, multiple sectors. And when I went over to this large multinational agency, I actually went to work on all their consumer brands, and I spent 3 years on Citibank and MetLife, on Wall Street Journal, and some time on Microsoft. So I had all this different sector experience. And then I got asked to pitch and run a new business pitch for a client for the consumer healthcare group. And we won the business. And when we won the business, they asked me if I'd like to be the SVP group creative director for the consumer healthcare group and take over the group. And of course, I took on the opportunity, and we had some fantastic clients, some really terrific work. But one particular project we were working on was around Breast Cancer Awareness Month. And I've done a lot of work around breast cancer awareness since. But this one was like my first foray into Breast Cancer Awareness Month. And the team was creating a TV spot for women to drive early detection and really to get women to be more aware of the need to have a mammogram, to do their own self checks. And the team came up with a brilliant idea called If You Were My Sister. And it was that experience, both in the shoot where we were actually filming real breast cancer survivors, that I felt this visceral calling. This is where I need to be. I could see the change that we were creating. And so it was in that moment and in that time of running that group that I knew I wanted to stay in healthcare and in wellness. And as my career moved on, I got this opportunity to go and start a consumer digital and CRM agency. And that changed the dynamics, because when you're running a group, you're working on set client business, and you might have 5 different clients, but you're working and you own a client book of business. When you're running an agency and you're a partner in an agency, it takes on a whole new level, because you're thinking about the vision. You're not thinking about the vision for the idea. You're thinking about the vision for the agency. What do you want to become known as? Who are you? What are your values? And what do you stand for? And I got very entrenched in the health and wellness space and grew passionate about it, about affecting change. And I was very fortunate, because when I went to start this shop over, and I guess 2.5 years in, we had 3 B2B companies and we had 1 consumer company, and we merged the companies, and I became one of the leaders and partners of that company and one of the CCOs. And when we merged, the charter became different. The charter was, we want to be the most awarded. We want to be known as innovative. And so that forced me as a creative leader to really think differently and to do differently. And I was fortunate, because the owners, it was an independent company, so the owners invested in the ideas I put forward. But that really started to grow that side of me, which really wanted to push and create life-changing ideas, because I really enjoyed and really felt passionate about having an impact in this world.
Yeah, I'm curious to hear more about your, moving through the portal of motherhood is forever transformative in who we are and how we show up in the world and how we understand the world around us, especially like you said, with health and wellness. That's, the major experience is usually in a hospital when we give birth. And so I would love to hear more about how motherhood has impacted the way that you show up in the industry.
Motherhood had a profound impact on me. I felt this acute sense of responsibility, this need to create this safe, protective, and healthy environment for my child, for my newborn, and to grow my newborn. And interestingly, within a few months, I got pregnant again. And so I had 2 children in the period of a little over a year. And the sense of which this responsibility, it's how do I show up? Well, my job was important because I was a contributor to my household. And so I had to show up and do a really good job. But motherhood really shifted the way I behaved on the job. And what I mean by that is when I was younger, prior to getting pregnant and having children, I was I had a strong voice, I had a strong point of view. And I also was very fearless and fierce in my point of view. And I stuck with that. But motherhood did change me, because it made me softer. It made me recognize. It also made me a fierce protector of my family. The mother and her cubs. I would do anything for my children. And so I think that, I have 3 children, and motherhood continues to impact me as I continue to age, because I think there's many stages of motherhood. So how I show up today, back then it was like, how do I protect and create this safe environment, this environment of learning and growth and opportunity for my children. Now my children are adult children. How do I create a space, or how do I create a space or a nest where they want to come back to, and they understand the importance of family, but the importance of self going out there in the world. So really, the journey's been very interesting for me. Because when you do become an empty nester and you let your kids go, now you're thinking, how can I help them with self-care? How can I help them think differently about their wellness and well-being and their health care? I don't have the ability to affect a change with them, but I have the ability to influence it. And so, and then how I show up in the industry with that is like now as I build things and as I create, whether it's for other companies or for Under the Sisterhood, it's with the sensibility of what is my legacy that I'm leaving? How am I role modeling certain behaviors for my children that will manifest and will help them see ways to be?
Yeah, I think, I'm a mother of two small children, and I think that women tend to have a really conscious understanding of community, and that includes our children, of course, but health and protecting our tribe and bringing the resources that we need so that we can really thrive comes to bear when we have children in this really powerful way, where we see this direct connection between health and wellness and how our children can grow up and have the lives that we wish for them. And so I also would love to know how you see health and wellness, and has the sort of definition of it shifted throughout your life through different phases of your life?
Wow, this is a massive question. And what I would say is, first and foremost, there's been incredible transformation in health and wellness over my lifetime and in the industry I've been in. And we could speak about, there's so many different dimensions and layers to this, and we could speak about it for days. So what I'm going to do is just focus on one aspect, because I'm a consumer healthcare expert. I want to come at it from the point of view of the consumer and their relationship to health. And so when I began in the healthcare industry, and as I said, healthcare, I was very healthcare focused. It was all about the physician as the authority figure. Patients looked at doctors like they were God, and they listened to them and took their physician's direction without questions. And so imagine you go in, you're just diagnosed with some sort of condition. The doctor puts you on meds for the rest of your life, or something happens and you need to have surgery. And so patients would just go forward and they'd listen to their doctor. And they did this for decades without any question. And so what I saw over time, and I saw it through the lens, because of course I was in a profession being in health and wellness advertising. I saw over time the advertising industry have direct to consumer come in, where we could educate consumers about a particular condition and drive them into their doctor's office to ask about a medication, a condition, might I have this, and maybe sort of get involved in their diagnoses. And this was a huge shift, because suddenly patients were asking questions. And that drove really a movement towards patient centricity, where, and a shift, of course, to the consumerization of health, where patients and people became empowered to take care of their health and wellness journey. And so originally it was really taking care of their health journey, and now wellness has been added to that. And so looking at it from prevention to diagnosis to treatment to management of a condition. And, technology, when I started, there was no technology. Technology has only enabled this more and more. And so when you think about prevention and you think about wearable devices to mobile apps that help patients stay compliant and adherent to medication, has really changed and made people given them more active roles at every stage of their health journey. And so that's been just amazing and such a huge shift, if you will. On top of that, today we have a more conscious consumer. And so wellness is ubiquitous. There's so many modalities available, and they're widely accepted and practiced. Healthier diets and exercise, which were traditional, you have to do this for a healthy lifestyle, are no longer poo-pooed. They're more adapted and adopted into people's lives. Yoga, meditation, mindfulness, all of these self-care practices are becoming more and more indoctrinated into people's lives. And it's a different conversation that we're having today. And so when I think about the beginning of my journey in the business into healthcare, it was very treatment focused. And back then it was very treatment focused. Today it's about prevention. And as people are living longer today, technology will enable them to live more qualitative lives, even with chronic conditions. So we are living in a different time as it relates to health. And then the other thing is, now that we can have telehealth visits, we can be sitting in our living room and have appointments with our doctors, whether they're our internists or specialists, we can be having these really hard conversations in our own living rooms. And I think that putting people in these very comfortable positions to have difficult conversations only makes them more willing to learn to take control of their health situation. So there's been so much change in the health and wellness space, and the definitions will continue to shift. But I think really for me, I'm looking at the consumer, the healthcare journey, if you will. And I think about now prevention has been added, which equals to wellness. It's all about wellness. And then the healthcare side is about diagnosis, treatment, and then management of conditions. And I think that across that health continuum, and as you look at the consumer becoming the patient and living with illness, we'll see a big shift in terms of living longer, living with disease and conditions, and living a healthier life.
Yeah, you have seen a really incredible evolution of health and wellness over the last, several decades that you've been in this industry. And I'm wondering if you're noticing in what you see today, if there's anything that's still missing.
Women's health has made tremendous progress. There are so many products out there that really serve women and their health, but there's so much more progress to be made. And I think that when we think about it, a lot of the conversations I've had, everybody says, it wasn't until 30 years ago in 1993 when women became part of clinical trials. So the drugs that exist prior to 30 years ago have not been tested on women. And yet when you think about it, when you think about a woman symptomology for a heart attack is different than a man's, you don't want to treat them the same way. And they might might go into the ER feeling these symptoms and might be said, that's not a heart attack or anything. And they might go home. So I think it's women's health is a huge thing. I think women's bodies are different. They need to be treated differently. I also, based on my experience in the healthcare industry, women on average, it can take 5 to 10 years to get diagnosed with an autoimmune disease. And I know this is an area where they're investing in women's health is the autoimmune disease area. Women are more likely to get autoimmune diseases. And so it's interesting, like with the products that I worked on, was educating and trying to shorten that timeline to figuring out when someone actually, what their diagnosis was. So that was interesting to me, but that's just an example. And then I think that there's the other side of it. When we think of women's health, our bodies are different. They need to be treated differently. I think that, women's health VCs, what I've learned about these funds is they're smaller funds, which means there's not as much investment, although they invest in more companies. I think that, it would be great to get larger institutions investing in women's health in a more meaningful way. To understand the value of that. And it's interesting to me, I think a lot about this. What's funny is if we have a male-dominated investment community, all of them have a mother, were birthed from a mother. They likely have a sister, a wife, a daughter. And so you would think that they'd see the value in investing in women's health because their family is affected by it. And so that's what I don't understand. But I am hoping that we'll see a change in that, and investment will continue to happen in more meaningful ways. The other area that I think has been, I don't know if it's missing, but I think has come to light and has become a more hot topic is health equity. And I know I interviewed Dr. BCW, BioCurry Winchell. She's an amazing physician and thought leader. She's done a number of TED Talks around health equity and the disparities of that. And she has a platform called Beyond Clinical Walls. I think it's worth both listening to her podcast on Under the Sisterhood, but going on and listening to her TED Talks and going on to her platform to learn, because she's all about education on the disparities of all kinds of conditions and how it affects different communities. And I think she does a brilliant job of that. But more importantly, the fact that she's shedding the light on this. Health equity is a hot topic. A lot of companies, as I said, I come out of health and wellness, the advertising industry. I know that the ad agencies are a lot of conversation around health equity and what they can do about it. Their clients are looking to them for solutions and ideas around that. So health equity is a big thing. But what's interesting to me is also light has been shed on the disparities with health equity. We will have our December Under the Hood event on December 13th will focus on health equity. Dr. BCW will be one of the panelists, as well as Dr. Emily Cunnings, and she works at a Gateway hospital right now. And so that's a really interesting, she's young, she's just become a doctor. It's going to be interesting to hear the conversation around health equity as it relates to, and we're hoping to have a third physician talk about it from her MD, from a physician perspective as it relates to women's health specifically. So we're going to look at health equity across the board and then focus as well as on women's health. But I think that those are the two things for me that, both are it's about shedding light on the health equity, and for women's health, it's about continuing to invest and continuing for women to go out there, and gentlemen to go out there and innovate and fill these unmet needs that women have.
I want to come back to your story. I would love to hear about some of your big wins or the big things that you're really proud of that you've done in the health and wellness space.
The first was creating an experiential event, and this was actually with a client's work. For Novartis vaccines, we had their travel portfolio vaccines. So I created a day in the life of someone going to Japan, like a traveler to Japan, and what the experience would be like. So I created this experiential event. And this is sort of the beginning of when the seeds got planted, and I started thinking bigger and bigger and bigger every year. And so I created this experiential event. People entered our office space, and there were films like documentaries. We had sushi out, and then we took them throughout the office, and we had an interactive like spaces, like a museum, a curated experience. And it was just brilliant. And so I did that year. And then we had another client, and it was a product for metastatic breast cancer, and they wanted to make a big splash during Breast Cancer Awareness Month. So I was able, with the team, to create Share the Little Things, which was the first social platform in healthcare to support women with metastatic breast cancer and their families to share the little things that mattered most. When you're living with any sort of disease, the little things matter. What I've learned in life is that whether you're healthy or not healthy, the little things always matter. And so it was a brilliant initiative and platform that we worked on, and I was really, really proud of. I said to my partners, the owners of the company, I would come up with a business plan. I said, I'd really like to launch, I said, the gross national happiness quotient at an all-time low. And I would really love to create an app for that. And I had this idea called Happy Fuel, and we built this app and this web app, and it was an unbelievable brand and brand experience. The app itself was really cool. We came in second on the Webbies to Pinterest for best social site design. I mean, it was brilliant, but it really was hard to take off. It never took off in terms of getting your daily active users. And we ran it for 3 years. And every year we launched an event at Internet Week New York, and just created this community, if you will, and this energy in the company that was just a buzz. The next opportunity came. So after a couple of years later, it's always what's next. When you're creative, you never rest on a laurel or your laurels. Nothing is ever enough. And so the next thing was a personal experience. It hit me really, really deeply. My brother's wife was diagnosed with ovarian cancer, and she was dying. And I was the caregiver to my brother, who was the caregiver. And in that process, I recognized that caregivers are these unsung heroes and really needed to be celebrated and to be given voice. And so we created Caregivers Speak Up, and there were a series of documentaries that we launched in Cannes. It did really, really well on Facebook. We created this community, and it took off. Happy Fuel, trying to impact the gross national happiness quotient was more meaningful. I think really giving caregivers a voice and seeing them and witnessing them and celebrating them felt really, really good. And then I was fortunate because when I left the company of 10 years, I had decided, and I think that was at that moment and that juncture of my life that I was like, I really like being in these communities affecting change. And I went to Comcast, NBC Universal, into their health innovation arm. And I did another series of documentaries called A Day in the Home of the Caregiver, where we spoke to 5 different caregivers. We were on the journey to doing 25. But yeah, and I did some really interesting work there for the aging population and for telemedicine, and it got me in to see different things, and continued to take me on the journey. The group disbanded and we left and started a company called Cherish.
Wow, I think it's incredible to be a disruptor, a creative in an industry that is such a slow progressive industry, in the sense that everything is based on years and years and years of research and data and FDA regulations and certain approvals and just so much bureaucratic red tape. And so to be a person who's saying, I'm going to break the narrative and craft something new and help society experience health and wellness from a new perspective is really brave. And I think that bravery is a through line of what I'm hearing in your story. And I'd love to hear more about how you got to where you are now as the CEO founder of Under the Sisterhood and Sister Good.
I think that the way I am built as a human is I'm a feeling person. I feel into an unmet need and I run to the roar to try and solve it. It's just how I'm built. It's how I was built. And so I think that inherent in me is these incredible problem solving skills and this desire to do good, like always been. So it doesn't matter what it is. And therefore, like when I work with my clients, how can I be in it with them to solve this? What can I do to help them? Really, when I think about what drove Under the Sisterhood, I have to go back to 5 years ago. I mean, well, actually, it's more than 5 years ago. I mean, I left a big job. I like to say, a lot of things happened in my life at the same time. And I say that there's that great book by David Brooks, The Second Mountain. I was on top of the first mountain, top of my career, like everything in terms of arriving and having all the material external validations you need in life or you think you need. And then something happens. And instead of things happening to me, other than, my father passed, which was very obviously sad watching him die. And I didn't know, we had a mantra on our wall that was, be good to do great. And I'm like, I'm leading a company, but I need to be good to do great for me. Like, what am I doing? And so I really felt called. And so because they gave me these opportunity to do all of these platforms, initiatives, products, I felt the desire to go out and do it in the bigger world. And then I ended up leaving. I jumped off the mountain, I like to say, and with a number of things in my life. And then my mother passed. And I felt like, I had this idea. Literally, Under the Sisterhood came to me in, close to the end of 2018. I had the name Under the Sisterhood, but my mind was in a different place with it. And I wanted to figure out, like, how do I get it to the place where I'm ready to really birth it? And so I parked it, which, if anyone knows me, that is not like me. I just run at things and make things happen. And I just sat with it. And one day, because I had this big voice in my industry, one day I'm like, you know what? I need to get my voice back. I'm like, Under the Sisterhood, we're going to start with the podcast. We're going to build this community. And I just started to see it. Like, I saw the branding, like I could literally see it in my mind's eye, and I just built it. And I'm like, oh, we need to do this. And then I realized that even if at the core, we're giving women voice, we're creating a space for women to be seen, heard, and celebrated. At the end of the day, I really want to create community and sisterhood, because isn't that what we are? Under the Sisterhood, we're about community. So we want to celebrate the individual, but by celebrating the individual, we want to build the collective. And so, so I was really inspired by things that happened in my life. It was very interesting and timely, coincidental, not planned at all, that the Supreme Court ruling would happen. And we launched on Women's Equality Day 2022. So we were having conversations. We were literally interviewing our first 12 guests while all of this was going down. So it really, some of it was, a lot of it was unplanned, is having been part of startups and companies where even in the agency world where, we would have our 2-year plan or our 5-year plan or what have you. So what I've done is, like, I've created this framework and this structure that is scalable, so that based on what's going on in the world, based on where we want to be as a mission, and our mission right now, our mission is to build a global community where women's well-being is strengthened through sisterhood. create this structure and platform that we can then scale accordingly based on where we want to go, based on listening and feeling what our community needs. And I think that that's what's kind of exciting, is being able to do that and not feel if it isn't a certain way. So I've been bootstrapping this. So I'm not beholden to any VCs or anybody. I build it, I pay for it, and make it happen. And that's been kind of interesting. So I hope that answered your question.
Yeah, and I would love for you to share how Under the Sisterhood is building this global community. I know we've gotten to have really incredible conversations where I've learned about the program that you're offering. I'd love for you to share just a little bit about what that is.
As I said, our mission is to build a global community where women's well-being is strengthened through sisterhood. And so we see that through a number of ways. One is through content, and content is through our podcast, creating this platform for women to be seen, heard, and celebrated and connected. And that's about giving women voice. We have podcasts, we have vlogs where they can share their superpowers and how they use these superpowers to support other women. But it's all about sharing stories, and it's about giving a message to women around the globe about what they think. Like, what would the message you want to be giving your 18-year-old self? But, and so that's a content play. Then we have programming and events. And when we think of programming, we've developed a proprietary methodology around taking women on a journey. Because one of the things I have found, based on personal experience, if you're not feeling good and strong within core, you're not going to be as likely to support the next woman. I've always been a woman's woman and would do anything to support a woman. But what I've noticed is that it isn't the case for everyone. And so what I think is, if we can create curriculum, if we can create programming that supports women along the journey of getting inner strength through self-discovery, through embodiment, through self-awareness practices, through self-care, through the 8 different modes of self-care, from mental, physical, environmental, emotional, and of course, more. And then, with self expression, finding your voice and learning how to advocate for yourself. And then lastly, through sisterhood, where you're in a position where you've gone through these, and it's a 12-week program. And so you've gone through 9 hours of content and experiences that really helps. And it's all facilitated query-based learning, where you take women along this journey. When you get to sisterhood, you start to be active and generous listeners. You learn how to be in a space with another and share the floor and share the table. And then also learning the fact that if, we know this to be the case, that, there aren't enough seats at the table for women. So if we're creating this sisterhood, we're saying, put your elbows out and create more seats for your fellow sisters. And so sort of what we're doing along the journey is role modeling behaviors that help women want to be that type of woman. And so my whole thing is women supporting women lifting each other up. Because the more we do that, the better the world will be. The more that we create more seats at the table, the better the world will be. And so that has been, the programming. And then we created Under the Hood events, and we've had sister circles, but the Under the Hood events have been really interesting, which is bringing in thought leaders, but really celebrating these incredible women from around the world, their expertise. And then we try and not all of them focus on the specific area they're in. So for instance, we did one on manifesting abundance, but through an entrepreneur, through a physician's perspective, and through a psychologist. So what we're trying to do is tap into subjects and get women experts in their areas to bring that lens into that area. So we're really getting under the hood. Actually, we have another event, we will have had it last Wednesday, which is about innovation and inclusion, the importance of women leaders. And the 6th level authors came to me and contributors and said, we're doing something really interesting. We think it's a really great opportunity to collaborate. I'm like, let's do a panel on this. I think that the audience, that women around the world would really appreciate this. So really looking to, again, get back to educate, but create interactive experiences for women. And then with the Under the Hood network, we're trying to, at the end, whether it's through chat, whether it's, allow women to raise their hands, tell their stories, say, I'm looking for this. How do we connect women? And so to create this very organic environment so that you might find opportunities. And of course, it's virtual, and it's virtual so that we can be more inclusive. You know, one day we hope to be in many different countries and cities having these events, but right now we're grateful to Zoom for having a space to be able to create this experience.
And I can say, having been on a panel, having attended the events, that I have been introduced to and connected with women who I would not otherwise have had the opportunity to meet, and who are incredible women. And maintaining those connections with them is incredibly easy because we just truly enjoy each other. We connected at a level underneath of, the more transactional, more networking type of experience where, I say it's like the Walking Dead, where you just hand business cards out and you're like, this is what I do, da da da, and you move on. Your events that you've curated and the people who are attracted to them are really celebrating their aliveness and who they are and wanting to grow deeper roots with these other women. And it is a really powerful community to be a part of. So thank you for creating it.
Well, thank you for that, Danielle. I think I want to just highlight something within that, which is the comment around transactional. With Under the Sisterhood, I don't want to sound woo-woo, but everything we do is kind of from the heart. So it's really about wanting to truly make a difference in women's lives. Yeah, you want to give out your card, but we want to connect women in a more meaningful way. And that's because that's who I am. Every person who joins, whether it's our board of advisors, whether it's joining the team as facilitators in any capacity, has to have that kind of heart. I have to feel it. It's just something you feel that connection. And so hence why I asked, I thought you would be great to host me in this conversation, because I knew you would ask questions and surprise me and go on a journey, and that you would connect the dots. And I think that's an interesting thought, which is, if we can connect the dots for women, if we can help them connect the dots and see their value in society and really own it and lean into it and just understand their power, isn't that a wonderful thing? And then build sisterhood in the process.
Yeah. And look, I mean, it really brings us back to health and wellness, because when we can own our value and stand authentically in our own shoes without feeling like we need to compare ourselves to someone else, or, all of the discomfort and dis-ease that we experience in our bodies that then leads to more physical or emotional manifestations, depression, anxiety, da 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 da. You have just created this bedrock for mental wellness through Under the Sisterhood.
And that's part of our mission. It's like it's create this global community where women's well-being is strengthened through sisterhood. And it's strengthened because when you feel like someone has your back, when you feel that collection of women just coming together, just in support of one another, instead of like fighting to compete for that one seat at the table or that whatever it may be. I mean, the feeling's magnificent. It's a beautiful feeling, but more importantly, it really does promote the mental wellness. And I think that that's why Under the Sisterhood and really stepping into the health and wellness space based on my experience makes so much sense. And interestingly, Danielle, I cannot tell you the women I'm getting to speak with. I mean, yourself included, extraordinary women doing so many different things in the health and wellness space, whether they're CEOs of a women's health company, whether they're founders of a company for women living with breast cancer, whether they're VCs who are investing in women's health, whether they are life coaches who embody being and certain states of mind for healing. I mean, it's extraordinary, the conversations and the fact that everyone is so uniquely them, and we celebrate that. We celebrate us being uniquely ourselves, and yet at the same time, we celebrate our unique selves. We really want to build the collective whole. And we're not saying you have to be like someone else. It's like you just have to have someone else's back.
That's wonderful. Yeah. I mean, that's the world that I hope that my daughter grows up in. So is there anything else that you'd like to share with your audience that we haven't gotten to touch on?
Well, I think, I think that one of the things I ask everyone at the end is, if you were to give a message to women around the world of all ages, of all cultures, of all backgrounds, what would you want to say? And I think that that if I were to say anything, it would probably go back to our, like, go on that self-discovery journey, do that self-care, find your expression, find your voice and build sisterhood. Because when you go on that journey and you build these things within, because if we're not strong within, we cannot be strong in the outside world. And so you have to feel it. As my daughter Georgia would say, it's an inside job. Do the work. It's an inside job. And so if you do the work in self-discovery and really strong sense of self-awareness and gain that inner strength and that confidence and that core, your self-esteem is built, you do those self-care practices daily, whatever they may be for you, and you find your voice, and then you go out and build sisterhood. It is such a gratifying way to live. It's such a clear, clean, it's such a healthy way to live. You feel good and your heart just continues to expand. And so I really believe in that. And I also think that women should know that you're capable of anything you want to do. You just have to figure out what it is that, that lights your soul on fire and pursue it. And so don't give up ever on what those dreams might be. And it might not be that you can do it right now. It might be that it's a down the road thing, but continue to pursue your dreams, your aspirations, and help build a better world for women.
And so if there's people listening who are interested in getting more involved, they want to learn about the different sister programs, the circles, or the events, where would you like to direct them?
Well, they can go to underthesisterhood.com onto our contact, and they can send a message through that, or they're more than welcome to reach out to me directly at elizabeth@underthesisterhood.com. And with Sisterhood, sisterhood.org has a contact page as well, and we'll get back to you. And we'd love to have your involvement. We're really, really excited about what we're doing on building a global community where women's well-being is strengthened through sisterhood. So join us and become part of our sisterhood.
Thanks so much, Elizabeth. This has been such a joy, and I've learned a tremendous amount from you. So I really appreciate you giving me the opportunity to host this conversation.
Thanks for listening to Under the Sisterhood. If you haven't already, please give us a quick rating and review on Apple or Spotify. And make sure to follow us on Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, and LinkedIn so you can hear from more amazing women. This podcast is created and hosted by Under the Sisterhood, LLC, and Elizabeth Elfenbein, produced by Elizabeth Elfenbein and Matt Butler, and edited by Matt Butler. The music is by Ayla Schaefer. Her song, Rose.